Week 10 of the fantasy football season. Here's the top 36 running backs I'm ranking this week. Number 1, Jonathan Taylor of the Indianapolis Colts. So Taylor last week, he got bottled up from the Pittsburgh Steelers. I think it was just one bad game. And this week, a good matchup overseas here with the Atlanta Falcons coming in. So Jonathan Taylor, he's been great all season long. He had 9 touchdowns in the last 3 games prior to that game last week versus Steelers. And this week, he bounces back. Number 2, Christian McCaffrey of the San Francisco 49ers. So CMC, it's been a monster year for him. One of the best running backs in the league, once again, Christian McCaffrey. And it's never been an issue, the talent. It's just been, can he stay healthy? And when he has a healthy season like this year, it doesn't matter the matchup. He's going out there and putting up points. Number 3, Bijan Robinson of the Atlanta Falcons. Week in all right match over the Indianapolis Colts, overseas game. And usually these games are high scoring. So Bijan, we know he's a dual threat. They line him up all over the field. And this week, after coming off a good receiving game, let's see if he could get back going in the running game. Number 4, James Cook of the Buffalo Bills. James Cook, it's been a big season for him. Last week, another big game versus a good defense of the Kansas City Chiefs. And this week, a great matchup at the Miami Dolphins, a defense that can't stop anyone. And we just saw Derrick Henry go over 100 yards versus defense. Number 5, Jahmyr Gibbs of the Detroit Lions. Gibbs, he got locked up last week. And they had a good game plan, was that Minnesota Viking defense, where they were selling out on the run and making Jared Goff try to beat him. So this week, an easier matchup at Washington. Their defense has gotten torched over the last few weeks, and I think we're in for a Gibbs bounce back. Number 6, Rico Dowdle of the Carolina Panthers. So the Carolina Panthers, they finally said, let's just give Rico the ball and let him become the number 1 back in this backfield. And that's exactly what they did last week in the upset victory at the Packers. 25 carries, 130 yards, and 2 touchdowns. Week 5, Week 6 big games from Rico Dowdle, over 200 yards from scrimmage. And this week in a slam dunk matchup versus Saints, I think he goes out there once again and puts up numbers. Number 7, Devon Achane of the Miami Dolphins. I know this Dolphin team isn't good. I know they don't do much on offense, but Achane, you could pencil him in 15 or more fantasy points pretty much weekly in PPR leagues. So in a game where they're going to be chasing points versus the Bills, I think Achane get involved a lot. Once again, number 8, Saquon Barkley of the Philadelphia Eagles. So Saquon Barkley, it's been an up and down season for him, and obviously a lot of miles on his body. Last season, over 300 touches, had the 2,000 yards, and then obviously on their way to a Super Bowl run where they won. But this week, a tougher matchup at Green Bay. Barkley had his best game of the year in Week 8 before the bye, going over 150 yards from scrimmage and finding a touchdown versus the Giants. And this week, I think he goes out there, has a good game. Number 9, Josh Jacobs of the Green Bay Packers. See, he's the main man on this offense is Josh Jacobs. And now with Tucker Kraft out for the season, I think they're going to look to run the football even more and get Jacobs even more involved in the passing game, where that's the only downside for Jacobs in fantasy leagues. He don't catch the football much out of the backfield. But this week versus Philadelphia, this is going to be a heavyweight matchup between 2 of the top teams in the NFC. And I think Jacobs, he's up for the test once again. Number 10, Derrick Henry of the Baltimore Ravens. Henry, the last couple weeks, he wrote the ship after he had a few games in a row where he failed to reach double-digit fantasy points, and his yards per carry were down, but last week over 100 yards. This week, a pretty good matchup indoor game, which is a plus as well on the fast track at Minnesota. Even though they did bottle up Gibbs last week, I think Henry will have a good ball game. Number 11, Kyren Williams of the Los Angeles Rams. So Kyren Williams, it's been a solid season once again for him, and that's why he got the contract extension is Kyren Williams. He's a smaller back, I know that, but he can handle a full workload. And last week, another big game. It was for him, 25 carries, 114 yards, and a touchdown. So this week at San Francisco, a banged up and depleted defense, both out for the season. And Fred Warner, I think Kyren Williams keeps it going, what he's been doing all year. Number 12, Bucky Irving of the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. So I think Bucky Irving will return this week. They didn't put him on IR, and I think the plan all along was to let him heal up 3-4 weeks. We got Rashad White, and then let him return after the bye weeks. And now the bye week's up. And this week, it's a tougher matchup versus New England, obviously one of the better defenses in the league, and a stout defense at times, a bend-but break unit. But Bucky Irving, he was a second-round pick in most fantasy drafts. He's a dual threat. He had a good rookie season last season, and right now, healed up. I think Irving could go out there and come out with a good ball game. 13, Jalen Warren of the Pittsburgh Steelers. So Warren, he's been pretty consistent in this backfield, and the number 2 option in this offense behind DK Metcalf, in my opinion, is Jalen Warren. So last week it was a good ball game for him in the victory versus the Indianapolis Colts. This week, decent matchup at the Chargers. I know their defense has been hit or miss this season is Los Angeles, but Jalen Warren, he could do a little bit of everything, and Kenneth Gainwell has taken a little bit of a backseat of late in touches as well, 14. Ashton Ginty of the Vegas Raiders. So Ginty last week found the end zone, and he's been pretty solid, I believe, Ginty in his rookie season. And now with Brock Bowers back in the lineup, I think it's going to open things up more in the running game. And we want to see Ginty catch a little more out of the backfield. But last week he did have a receiving touchdown. This week definitely a tough matchup at the Denver Broncos. But I think Ginty on volume still could go out there, have a decent performance. 15, DeAndre Swift of the Chicago Bears. So I'm assuming Swift's going to come back in this game. Last week we saw he was out with the groin, and Kyle Monangai filled in, and he had a monster game. 26 carries, 176 yards on the ground. So right now, DeAndre Swift, he could do a little bit of everything. He's been a main piece of this offense all season long. And this Bear offense, one of the better offenses in the league, where Ben Johnson, a great offensive mind, came in as the coordinator of the Lions and now came in as the head coach here for the Bears. And they're putting up numbers. 16, Quinshon Judkins of the Cleveland Browns. So this Jet team, they just traded Quinnen Williams away, just traded Sauce Gardner away. And I think Quinshon Judkins now, with their two best defenders gone and traded it off at the deadline, he could go out there and have more upside in this game. Like I said, this defense is depleted now of the New York Jets. Judkins, he's having a solid rookie season. I know he's banged up a little bit with a shoulder injury, but I think he could go out there as Judkins and have a good performance. And they're coming off a bye as well, where he could be refreshed. 17, Breece Hall of the New York Jets. So supposedly the Kansas City Chiefs offered a 4th-round pick for Breece Hall, but the Jets wanted a 3rd, and obviously he stayed with the Jets past the deadline. So Breece Hall, I think it would have been great for him to go to Kansas City, and his numbers would have ballooned even up more, I think, in Kansas City, where those running lanes will be open, where they got all those playmakers in this offense. But this week, a tough matchup versus Cleveland. Obviously, Myles Garrett, Denzel Ward anchoring that defense over there for this Browns. But Breece Hall, he's going to get his workload. He's a good receiver out of the backfield, and someone's going to have to make plays. And him and Garrett Wilson are pretty much the only two players on this roster, and Mason Taylor at times, that make plays. 18, J.K. Dobbins of the Denver Broncos. So Dobbins, he's getting the touches, 15, 18 touches per game in the backfield for this Denver Bronco team. But sometimes he is a touchdown-dependent back, or a back that you have to bank on getting over 100 yards. But this week, a good matchup versus the Vegas Raiders. I know R.J. Harvey is taking a lot of passing downs and receiving work of late here from J.K. Dobbins, but still he's a running back that's a solid RB2 option for fantasy owners. 19, Travis Etienne of the Jacksonville Jaguars. Etienne, it's been a decent season for him. I know Bachel Tutin last week, he stole a goal line touchdown late in that game at the Raiders, but this week a tough matchup obviously at the Houston Texans, a bend but don't break defense and a stout defense for the most part. But Etienne, he's getting the work this season. Decent receiver out of the backfield as well, and I think he'll work his way into volume. 20, Kamini Vidal of the Los Angeles Chargers. So far it's been a mixed bag of results for Vidal as the number one back over here in Los Angeles. 2 good games, 2 bad games for him. So last week he didn't do much, which was an easy matchup on paper, the Tennessee Titans. And this week a tougher matchup versus Steelers, where they bottled up Jonathan Taylor last week. But I think Vidal, he'll bounce back in this game. And Amari Hampton, he's going to be out most likely to week 13. So Vidal will still be the leading back unless he goes down with injury. 21, David Montgomery of the Detroit Lions. So last week, David Montgomery was the better back between him and Gibbs. He found the end zone. He was physical in between the tackles. And this week, it is a good matchup at the Commanders, where I could see in the second half of this game, they got a good lead, is Detroit. And we know Montgomery's a bruiser, and he'll run the clock out. So with those factors, and he's still getting a decent amount of goal line touches this season, I like Montgomery as an RB2. 22, Ramondre Stevenson of the New England Patriots. Stevenson, he missed last week's game. And I thought Trevion Henderson and Terrell Jennings filled in well, sharing the backfield. But I think Stevenson will be back this week. This is a big matchup at the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, where a lot of points could be on the board between both these teams. And Stevenson, the coaching staff likes him. He's the goal line back, is there as well. And really, Trevion Henderson, before last week, he barely touched the football. 23, Aaron Jones of the Minnesota Vikings. So they got good news on Jones. He's day-to-day right now with a sore shoulder, is Aaron Jones. I thought it was going to be worse. He had the AC joint sprain, supposedly. He left the game last week, and he didn't return in that one at the Lions. But Aaron Jones, he still has something left in the tank. We saw a nice 56-yard run from him last week, and he's the better receiver out of the backfield as well between him and Jordan Mason. Just the only thing, I think Mason's still going to get short yardage and goal line, and I still think this is a 50-50 split between these two running backs. 24, Kyle Monangai of the Chicago Bears. So I don't know how it's going to shake out in this backfield if DeAndre Swift returns. But obviously, if Swift returns, he's going to get majority of the touches, in my opinion. Monangai last week, he put on a show, even though he's had a bad Cincinnati defense, 25 carries, 176 rushing yards. And obviously, Ben Johnson and his coaching staff has confidence in Monangai, and we saw the damage he could do out there. But this week, like I said, we don't know for sure what his role is going to be. But if Swift is out, to me, Monangai, he's a top 12, top 15 option then versus a bad Giant defense. 25, Kenneth Walker of the Seattle Seahawks. Another 50-50 backfield with him and Zach Charbonnet. And Kenneth Walker last week, he had a couple burst runs. But the thing is, not enough touches are going around between both these backs. And Charbonnet, most weeks, does have the upside more than Kenneth Walker because of the goal line touches. But Walker, we know he's got home run ability. This is a good offense over there. And this week, it's a good matchup versus the Cardinals. 26, Jordan Mason of the Minnesota Vikings. So like I said, Aaron Jones is the better option right now in fantasy football. But I think overall, Jordan Mason in between the tackles is a way better back at this point in their careers between him and Aaron Jones. So Jordan Mason, physical running back, last season filled in for Christian McCaffrey. I thought he did a good job. And this week versus Baltimore, their run defense hasn't been good this season. So we'll see how it shakes out over there. But like I said, because of Jones's receiving prowess, I have him a little bit higher in the ranking. 27, Woody Marks of the Houston Texans. So this backfield for the majority of the season has been up and down and hard to predict over there in Houston. So Woody Marks, we know he's the receiving back. We know he's a smaller back. But at this point, I don't think Nick Chubb has much left in the tank. And he's just taking touches from Woody Mark. I understand short yardage and goal line. Chubb's still the big physical back. But in terms of overall and getting more touches, I think it should go to Mark. So this week, it's a good matchup versus Jacksonville Jaguars. And we'll see how many touches Marks gets in this one. 28, R.J. Harvey of the Denver Broncos. So R.J. Harvey, he's been explosive over the last 2 ball games. 4 touchdowns in the last 2 games. And he's doing this on 7 to 10 touches per game. I know he's the passing downs back. Good receiver out of the backfield. They used the second-round pick on him in the NFL draft. And this week, Thursday night, usually high-scoring games. And it's an easy matchup versus the Vegas Raiders. 29, Tyrone Tracy of the New York Giants. So pretty much it was a 50-50 split last week in the loss versus San Francisco 49ers. This week, matchup at Chicago, their defense ain't great. And the Chicago Bears, they do give up a lot of points, but also they create turnovers. So if they're up early in this one and the Giants are chasing points, I give Tracy the edge because he's more of a receiver out of the backfield than Singletary. And 30, Devin Singletary, I think Singletary, we could see him get goal line touches in this game for this New York Giant team. He was the more efficient back in terms of yards per carry, where he had 8 carries, 43 yards on the ground in last week's game. But like I said, if the Giants are trailing early and often in this one, I don't think we'll see much of Singletary. 31, Alvin Kamara of the New Orleans Saints. I've said this all season long. I think Father Time caught up, unfortunately, to Alvin Kamara. He's on a bad Saint team where they only got 1 win on the season. Now they traded Rashid Shaheed away, another offensive weapon off the roster. And Kamara last week, it was just a bad performance, obviously. 0.70 fantasy points. So he's not catching the football out of the backfield. Got the rookie back, Tyler Show, in there at quarterback. And this week at the Carolina Panthers, I know it's an okay matchup, but Kamara weekly, he's been dropping down the rankings quickly. 32, Zach Charbonnet of the Seattle Seahawks. So like I said earlier, he's a touchdown-dependent running back at Charbonnet. But if one of these guys ever went down and say Walker or Charbonnet took over 80% of the touches in the backfield, these guys would be top 15, 20 options weekly. So this week, a decent matchup versus Arizona. Last week, I thought the few opportunities Dallas ran the football, they ran the football well versus Cardinal defense. And I think both these running backs could be decent options. 33, Amari DiMercado of the Arizona Cardinals. So there is a chance Trey Benson, he could come back from injury, but his timetable was 4 to 6 weeks. He's on IR, and he already served the 4-game absence was Trey Benson. But DiMercado last week looked like the better back between him and Bam Knight. And I know it was an easy matchup at the Dallas Cowboys, where they're one of the worst run defenses in the league. But DiMercado, he's got more juice. He can catch the football out of the backfield. And like I said, we'll see this week if Benson comes back. But right now, I think we're going to see a DiMercado and Bam Knight split in the backfield at least one more week. 34, Trevion Henderson of the New England Patriots. So last week, Henderson showing he could handle a workload. He had 18 touches in the game. I thought he looked good. Terrell Jennings was mixed in as well, where he found the end zone also for this New England Patriot team. And this week, it's a matchup with Tampa Bay, where it's going to be up and down the field between these two teams. So I think Henderson, he could go out there once again and be a back-end flex option for fantasy owners. 35, Bam Knight of the Arizona Cardinals. So Bam Knight's still going to get short yardage. He's going to catch 1 or 2 passes per game is Bam Knight. And he's a big physical back where at the goal line, obviously, they would use him over DeMarcado. But I think overall DeMarcado a better back for fantasy owners. But this week, it's not an easy matchup with the Seattle Seahawks, where last week they shut down that Commander run game, even though I don't think Krosky Merritt is that great of a running back. And also, Chris Rodriguez was eating into the workload. So I think this week, Bam Knight, you got to pretty much bank on him getting a short yardage touchdown if Trey Benson don't return in this game. And the 36th and final back on rankings, Nick Chubb for the Houston Texans. So this could be a game where the Texans could be up. And obviously, Chubb more the physical back in between the tackles and goal line back. But pretty much at this point, if you got Nick Chubb in your lineup, you're hoping he gets a goal line touchdown and falls into the end zone. Because like I said, he don't catch the football out of the backfield. He's definitely lost some burst and lost his step. Obviously coming off a devastating knee injury last season, suffered early in the season. But this week with a good matchup versus the Jaguars, and we saw Ashton Ginty and Mostert even get some work in that backfield, have a good game versus defense. That's the top 36 running backs I'm ranking for Week 10 of the fantasy football season.